Up high, it's a little bit more different. We've got some showers. It's not going to accumulate much in the valley at all, but the showers in the mountains definitely are accumulating some light rain. And then we've got to look forward to Christmas week. Travel-wise, we've got rain, and then eventually we're going to get snow as well. And you know what? We need it. It was a great little break, but we got to get back into the game here. And by the way, this huge ridge of high pressure, which has been blocking any meaningful systems from getting in here, that's why we've been so dry lately, has been blocking anything from getting in here. Southern California for snow, not great. Utah, not great. New Mexico, Colorado. So everybody needs a change, and we're going to get that. With we've already seen some of the breaking up of the clouds. The 50s yesterday was nice. Today we're going to make a run up to 60 degrees, and you can see that we only really have the more steady showers in the coastal range and the Sierra as well, with just some spotty stuff closer to the valley floor. It's not going to last very long. By this afternoon, that should be out of here, and then we're really going to notice the temperatures shoot on up. Now, this is not going to be a quote-unquote warm day, but when the sun busts through, instead of the 40s with clouds all day long, we're going to see some, at least partial sunshine and warmer temperatures. This technically is going to go down as above average, and we're only 5 degrees away from a record in places like Sacramento. So yeah, this is going to be oddly kind of a warm one for us, and the warmest day in the last couple of weeks. Okay, let's take a look at the new pattern emerging. We've got a little bit left over this morning, but then it's going to be dry. A dry Thursday, Friday evening, a new system comes in with valley rain and Sierra rain. And then through the weekend, another system. This is Sunday at noon, more Sierra rain, but then it eventually switches over to snow overnight. And then that's finally the moment when we see more consistent storms. And yes, this does include rain and snow on Christmas Day. But again, this new pattern has to be here. We're way behind for rain and snow in the higher elevations, and this certainly is going to help.
Happy Wednesday from San Diego, California. I'm CBS 8 meteorologist Vanessa Paz. This is a view of what San Diego has been dealing with over the past several mornings. Pockets of very dense fog that eventually mix out, making way to sunny skies, especially for areas away from the coast. We'll pretty much be in a rinse and repeat of that in the coming days. Coastal clouds continuing to take over our mornings. Today will be mild before we have a warm end to the work week, and we could potentially see a wet Christmas ahead for us here in San Diego. All right, we are expecting another somewhat mild day, warmer, especially for those areas away from the coast. Yesterday was another straight day that we broke records for the inland or the mountains and desert areas, rather. We easily beat the old records set in Campo and Borrego Springs back in the high 90s and early 2000s, with a high of 86 degrees and 85 yesterday afternoon. And Lake Cuyamaca beat their old record of 60s with a high of 73 yesterday. Here's what's on tap for today's highs. Similar, slightly comparable to what we experienced yesterday, and forecasting mostly mid to high 70s for the inland valleys, close to 80 degrees for spots like Santee as well as El Cajon. We're about 10 degrees cooler when it comes to the immediate coast. La Jolla, for example, forecasting a high of 62 later on today. That will be one of the cooler spots across the coastal communities. Meanwhile, mostly mid to high 60s from Oceanside all the way down to Del Mar, and anywhere between 5 to about 8 degrees warmer for those neighborhoods that hug the 15 corridor from Fallbrook all the way down to Rancho Bernardo. 77 later on today for Escondido, and 75 out in Poway. As we take a look at the mountain areas, we will be nice and mild in Mount Laguna in the low 70s, a little warmer in Alpine, 77 degrees, 73 later on today out in Julian. Onshore flow, we have this weak onshore flow, kind of more of this northerly flow that will continue to filter in later on this afternoon. Isolated gusts anywhere between 10 to 20 miles per hour, so nice sea breeze for those neighborhoods west of the mountains. And then winds gradually start to shift out of the east. So offshore flow makes a return Thursday and Friday, and that's going to warm things up for us as we wrap up the work week. So here's what's on tap for tomorrow's highs. It will be warmer, especially for the inland valleys. We'll be touching into the mid 80s, high 70s for the mountain areas, and low 80s for our deserts. And these numbers still well exceed where we should be for this time of year. Coastal areas will be in the low 70s later on to tomorrow afternoon. As we take a look at the rain chances, notice how we don't have a shot of rain all the way through about Monday, but on Tuesday, that number starts to climb. All right, as we take a look at the big picture, high pressure keeping that storm track to our north in the coming days all the way through the weekend. But we do have this system that's brewing off the coast of British Columbia that's going to eventually drop south, cut off low from the jet stream. That's going to bring us some possible showers as early as Tuesday, but it looks like the bulk of activity could potentially be Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Those models will will change as we get closer to next week. But as of right now, some of our models are becoming ambitious, showing that we could have some wet weather in time for our holidays. All right, coastal and inland areas look like this. As I mentioned, we do have some warming tomorrow, lasting all the way through Friday, and the temperatures will start to drop, some noticeable cooling by the time we get to the weekend.
Hey, I'm meteorologist Brenden Mincheff, and we're going to talk about what an atmospheric river is. It's a term you may have heard, you may not be familiar with it, but you may have heard the term Pineapple Express. Not every atmospheric river is a Pineapple Express. However, as we will learn, every Pineapple Express is a type of atmospheric river. So as we look at the map, these are most common along the U.S. West Coast, especially in the wintertime. However, other parts of the United States, including the Gulf Coast and the Northeast, can see atmospheric rivers. In the Gulf of Mexico can act as that moisture source for atmospheric rivers moving up through the southeast and into the northeast. And sometimes you can get a nor'easter that can be attached to an atmospheric river. But let's jump into it. Let's look at the map. Well, when high pressure is sitting off the west coast, what that does is it kind of, for the most part, blocks the moisture from coming in. When high pressure slides a little bit further to the south, and especially when it's coupled with a storm passing through either British Columbia or the Pacific Northwest or even Northern California, what can happen is it can tap in to this atmospheric river. And what that is, it's a narrow band of moisture, about 1,000 miles long or so, and it can pull in a lot of tropical moisture into an area. For instance, this textbook example is showing it impacting California. And when that happens, it can bring a lot of rain. And if it's cold enough or your mountains are high enough, it can bring a lot of snow with it. This type of setup here, where it originates near Hawaii, is a Pineapple Express. Here's some more facts about atmospheric rivers. Atmospheric rivers carry 7.5 to 15 times the flow of the mouth of the Mississippi River. They vary. Some of them are stronger, some of them are weaker, but they are very, very wet systems, and that's why we get a lot of rain from these. And atmospheric river events are responsible for the majority of the water supply on the U.S. West Coast. Here is a satellite image of an atmospheric river. Again, this is a type of atmospheric river that we might call a Pineapple Express. It originates near Hawaii. High pressure sits here, and so it brings this moisture, for instance, here into California. But if your high pressure is a little bit further north, it can bring that moisture up into the Pacific Northwest. Again, this setup here is a Pineapple Express. So to be clear, a Pineapple Express is an atmospheric river that pulls moisture from Hawaii. But not every atmospheric river is a Pineapple Express. This one here, here's another example. You see the atmospheric river extending out from Hawaii, but that moisture is being pushed into the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia. So every Pineapple Express is an atmospheric river, but not every atmospheric river is a Pineapple Express. And we rank atmospheric rivers based on two things: by the amount of water in them and how long that atmospheric river is going to last. So a weak or level 1 atmospheric river is primarily beneficial, not a lot of flood risk, relatively the same for a level 2 moderate atmospheric river. By the time we start talking about a level 3, AR3 on the scale here, that's a stronger atmospheric river. It's both equal parts beneficial and hazardous, but as soon as you start working your way up in strength to category AR category 4, AR category 5 on the scale, well, that means now we're talking about atmospheric rivers that are mostly hazardous or primarily hazardous, meaning they have so much moisture and they're going to last for so long that the flood risk is much higher.